The galaxy had seen many strange things, but nothing prepared them for what they found on the human body. It began on a quiet research station floating near the edge of Orion's arm. The station was run by the Zorath, a race known for cold logic and endless curiosity. They studied every new species with care, recording data, collecting samples, and storing their findings in great crystal archives. When humans first appeared on their scanners, the Zorath did not think much of them. Another new species, fragile bodies, small lifespan, and no great technology compared to older civilizations. To the Zorath, humans looked ordinary. But that belief ended when the first human body was brought to the station. The body came from a wrecked Earth ship discovered drifting in the dark between stars. The hull was broken, the engines dead, and only one body was found inside. A man, no longer alive, but his form still whole despite the deadly cold of space. The Zorath placed the body on their silver tables, bright lights above, tools ready to cut and measure. At first it was routine. They checked the skin, the muscles, the bones. All seemed normal, weaker than some species, stronger than others. But then one of the scientists noticed something. A strange mark burned into the tissue of the heart. It was not a wound. It was not an injury. It looked like a pattern, a design, as if the body itself had been trying to write a secret. The chief scientist ordered the others to run deeper scans. Waves of energy passed through the body, revealing signals hidden inside the cells. To their shock, the human body carried codes, not genetic codes only, but signals that looked like language. The tissue spoke in whispers of light. The scans showed bursts of data, repeating shapes, almost like encrypted maps. The scientists could not explain it. Never had they seen a body that stored messages inside its very flesh. Word spread fast across the station. More researchers came to see the human body. Some believed it was a trick, a leftover from human technology hidden inside the body. Others feared it was something more. The galaxy was old and full of secrets. But this was beyond logic. A body carrying knowledge? A body writing codes in its own blood and bones? It was something new. One young researcher leaned closer to the scans and gasped. The codes were not random. They matched star charts. Old star charts. Paths leading to forgotten places. Some of the stars were long dead, others unknown. The room grew silent as they realized what this could mean. The human body was not just a body. It was a map. A guide. But a guide to what? Treasure? A weapon? A hidden world? Nobody could tell. Fear rose among them. If one human body carried such secrets, what about the rest of the species? Were humans hiding something? Or did they themselves not know what lived inside their blood? The chief scientist ordered the body locked in a secure chamber. Only a few could enter, and all records were sealed. But it was already too late. The news had slipped out. Across the station, whispers ran like fire. And soon, messages were sent to nearby fleets. The galaxy was about to turn its eyes toward Earth. The Zorath argued among themselves. Some wanted to study in silence, to keep the secret until they were sure. Others wanted to announce the discovery to the Great Council. And some, darker in thought, wanted to use the knowledge for themselves. If the human body was a map, they would follow it first, before anyone else. Far away, on Earth, humanity did not know what had been found. They did not know their very bodies were holding mysteries that could shake the stars. But already, shadows moved across space. Ships changed course. Armies whispered of opportunity. And deep inside the chamber, the body of the man seemed to glow under the scanning lights, as if the secret inside him was waiting to be claimed. The young researcher could not sleep. She returned to the chamber at night, the soft hum of machines around her. She stared at the human face, calm and silent, and felt uneasy. Why would nature hide maps inside a living creature? Unless it was not nature. Unless it was designed. Her hands shook as she leaned closer. The codes in the scans began to change, new shapes forming, as if the body was alive in some strange way. She gasped in fear. What if the map was not leading to treasure or weapons? What if it was leading to something that had been asleep for a very long time? Something that now wanted to wake up. The station alarms suddenly rang. Strange pulses came from the human body, energy waves strong enough to trip sensors across the station. The scientists rushed in, shouting, their eyes wide with fear. The body on the table was still dead, yet its cells glowed like burning stars. And in that moment, every machine on the station translated the code into a single message. A message that made every alien heart freeze. The message was clear. Simple. Terrifying. It said, "We are coming." Panic spread across the station. The message from the human body repeated again and again on every screen. "We are coming." No one understood who had written it. The man was dead. His body had no machines, no implants, nothing that could send signals. Yet the words kept echoing through the research station like a warning from the grave. The Zorath scientists tried to shut down the systems, but the message burned itself into every device. It was as if the code inside the body had taken control of the machines. The chief scientist ordered the chamber sealed. Guards stood outside with plasma rifles, their scales shining under the red emergency lights. But fear was stronger than weapons. Every mind in the station carried the same question: who was coming? Some believed it was the humans themselves. Perhaps this was proof that they were not as weak as they appeared. Others thought it was something far worse, an ancient force that had used humans as carriers. The young researcher who had first seen the star charts felt her heart race. She remembered how the codes had shifted when she was alone with the body, how they seemed alive. Could the human body have been a key? And if so, what had it just unlocked? Far away, in the high halls of the Galactic Council, word reached the great powers. They did not trust each other, yet none could ignore the message. 1,000 races debated in endless chambers, voices rising in fear and anger. The human species was small, barely noticed until now. But suddenly, every empire wanted to know what secrets humans carried in their flesh. Fleets were ordered to move closer to Earth. Some came in peace, claiming they wanted answers. Others came with weapons ready, fearing the worst. Back on the research station, the body grew colder, yet the codes inside its cells continued to evolve. The scientists worked without rest, scanning deeper, trying to catch each new change. They saw visions inside the data, images flashing across their screens. Strange cities built of metal and fire. Shadows moving across broken worlds. And in every vision, they saw humans standing tall, unafraid, as if facing something greater than themselves. The images did not feel like memories. They felt like warnings. The young researcher could not take her eyes off the screens. Her mind whispered that these were not just random visions. They were a story, a history written inside the flesh of the human body. Perhaps all humans carried the same story, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. She wondered if the humans even knew what they were. Then something even stranger happened. The body twitched. Only for a moment, but every scientist saw it. The man had been dead for days, yet his fingers curled slightly, as if reaching for something unseen. The guards aimed their weapons, but the chief scientist stopped them. He wanted to see what would happen. The young researcher leaned closer, her voice trembling. "It is trying to wake," she whispered. The chamber filled with silence. And then, a low sound began to rise. Not from the machines, not from the walls, but from the body itself. A heartbeat. Slow, heavy, impossible. The corpse was coming back to life. Fear broke the order of the station. Some scientists ran, others prayed in their strange alien tongues. But a few, filled with dark hunger, smiled. If humans could rise from death, if they carried codes in their blood, then perhaps they were the key to power beyond imagination. The heartbeat grew stronger. The lights flickered. The air vibrated with unseen energy. And then the body's eyes opened. They were human eyes, but filled with burning light, like stars trapped inside. The man did not move, yet his gaze made every living being in the room step back. The young researcher felt her knees weaken. She had studied many species, but never had she felt such force from a single glance. It was not rage, not hate. It was something far more terrifying. It was purpose. The man's lips moved, but the voice that came out was not his own. It was deeper, older, carrying weight like the echo of mountains. "You opened the door," the voice said. "Now they will follow." The scientists froze. The young researcher whispered, "Who will follow?" The man's glowing eyes turned toward her. "The forgotten ones," he said. "They used us. They hid inside us. And now they come for you all." The chamber filled with silence, broken only by the hum of the machines and the steady, impossible beat of the heart. Across the galaxy, fleets moved toward Earth, unaware that something greater than war was already waking. And deep inside the human body, the code shifted once again, showing a final image before the screens went dark. A shadow stretching across the stars, vast and endless, swallowing whole systems in silence. The young researcher stared at the fading image, her mind cold with fear. She realized the message had never been a warning from humans. It was a promise from something else. Something that had used humans as vessels. And now, the galaxy would pay the price. The research station had turned into a place of fear. No one spoke loudly, no one trusted anyone. The human body that should have been silent in death now breathed faintly on the table, glowing veins pulsing like rivers of fire. The scientists had locked the chamber again, but the truth was clear. Locks and walls could not hold back what was inside. The Galactic Council demanded answers. War fleets were already moving, and their commanders threatened to destroy the station if the secret was not shared. The chief scientist tried to buy time, but he knew their days were numbered. Every empire wanted the human, alive or dead. Every ruler wanted the power hidden in his flesh. The young researcher sat alone in her quarters, staring at the data she had stolen. She could not forget the glowing eyes, the words that spoke of the forgotten ones. Her hands shook as she scrolled through the images burned into her memory. The star maps pointed to ancient places, dead systems long abandoned. Yet when she overlaid the maps on modern charts, a pattern appeared. The stars formed a shape, a giant spiral, and at its center was Earth. Her heart pounded. Could it be that humans were not just carriers but the key itself? If Earth stood at the center of the map, then everything revolved around them. She remembered the voice in the chamber. They used us. They hid inside us. The meaning grew clearer with each thought. Humanity had been seeded long ago, designed by something older than empires. The forgotten ones had written themselves into human blood. Meanwhile, in the chamber, the man's body grew stronger. He still did not move, but his heart beat steady now, and his chest rose with every breath. Machines recorded impossible energy flowing through his cells. His DNA twisted like living fire, changing faster than any science could track. The guards outside the chamber began to whisper. They swore they heard footsteps inside at night, even though the body never left the table. Some claimed they saw shadows moving on the walls when no one was inside. Fear became their only companion. On Earth, the first rumors reached human ears. Strange signals were intercepted, fragments of alien conversations. Governments tried to keep the truth hidden, but whispers spread across the planet. People spoke of fleets moving toward Earth, of secrets buried in human bodies. Most laughed, refusing to believe. But a few scientists noticed the signals and began running their own tests. What they found shocked them. Across Earth, scattered in labs and hospitals, doctors began to see strange anomalies. Human blood carried faint patterns, almost invisible, but when magnified they formed codes. People's bodies carried the same silent language that the aliens had found. It was not only the man on the station. It was everyone. Humanity itself was a message. The Galactic Council panicked when this was confirmed. Billions of humans across the galaxy, each one carrying the same secret? It meant the forgotten ones had planted seeds everywhere. Some races wanted to exterminate humanity before the secret awoke fully. Others wanted to enslave them, to use the power for their own empires. And a few wanted to protect them, fearing that if humans were destroyed, the codes would unleash something far worse. Back on the station, the young researcher made a choice. She entered the chamber alone once more, ignoring the fear that gripped her chest. The man's glowing eyes opened as she approached, and the voice spoke again, calm but heavy. "You have seen the maps," it said. She nodded, trembling. "What are you? What are the forgotten ones?" The body did not move, yet the voice filled the air like thunder. They were builders. They made the stars bow to them. But they grew hungry, and they needed vessels. They placed themselves in flesh, hiding across time, waiting for the day to return. The researcher whispered, "And humans are those vessels." The glowing eyes turned toward her. "Yes. They are the carriers of the code. They are the doorway through which we rise again. Her breath caught. Then, humanity is doomed. The voice was silent for a long moment. Then it answered, not doomed. Chosen. But the choice is not yours to make. It is theirs. When the code awakens in all of them, they will either become our jailers or our liberators. The words struck her like a blade. The fate of the galaxy rested not in the hands of ancient empires, but in the fragile species so many had dismissed as weak. Humanity's body carried not just a map, but a decision that could shape the stars forever. As she stood frozen in fear, alarm screamed again. This time it was not from the human body. Warships had arrived outside the station. Dozens of fleets, their weapons aimed and ready. The empires had come, and they demanded the secret. The young researcher looked at the glowing eyes one last time. The voice whispered a final warning. The galaxy does not fear us. It fears what humans will decide to become. The sound of gunfire shook the station. The war for the human body had begun. The black space outside the station burned with light. Fleets from a dozen empires surrounded the outpost, their ships like steel mountains hanging in the void. Some came in the name of peace, others in hunger for power, but all aimed their weapons at the same place, the chamber that held the human body. Inside, fear ruled. The Zorath scientists argued in panic. Some shouted that they should surrender the body to save themselves. Others swore they must protect the secret, no matter the cost. The chief scientist tried to command order, but the sound of warships charging their cannons shook every wall. The young researcher stood apart, silent, her eyes fixed on the sealed chamber. She remembered the glowing gaze, the voice that spoke of forgotten builders, and the choice humanity would soon face. She knew the fleets outside had no idea what they were about to awaken. A message came from the Galactic Council fleet. Their commander's voice echoed cold and sharp. Hand over the human body. Refuse, and the station will be destroyed. Before the chief scientist could reply, the voice of another empire cut across the comms. The human body is ours. Stand down or be reduced to ash. Dozens of fleets shouted at once, their threats colliding like thunder. And then, as if answering them all, the chamber doors inside the station groaned and opened. The human body walked out. Gasps filled the station. The man should have been dead, yet he stepped into the hall with slow, steady steps. His skin glowed faintly, his eyes burned with starlight, and his presence pressed on every mind like the weight of a black hole. Guards raised their rifles, but their hands shook too badly to fire. The voice that came from the human's mouth was not his own. You call to me, it said, deep and endless. And so I rise. Outside, every ship's sensors went wild. The fleets detected a surge of energy flowing from the station, brighter than a sun. It spread like waves across the void, touching each vessel, flooding their systems. Engines faltered, weapons shut down, lights flickered. Panic swept through the commanders as they realized their fleets were being disabled without a single shot fired. On the station, the young researcher forced herself to speak. What are you going to do? The glowing eyes turned toward her. We do nothing. We wait. Humanity must decide. But their time is short. Her heart pounded. The fleets will fight. They will destroy everything. The voice answered, then they will destroy themselves. That is always the way of fear. Suddenly, the alarm screamed again. A single fleet had broken ranks. Ships from the Rhina Empire, ruthless hunters known for their endless wars, opened fire. Beams of plasma ripped across the station's shields, tearing holes in the walls. Explosions shook the corridors. Scientists screamed as fire consumed the labs. The human figure did not move. He only raised his hand, and the fire stopped mid-air, frozen like glass. Every burning spark hung motionless. The station grew silent. Then, with a sweep of his hand, the flames vanished as if they had never existed. The young researcher stared in awe. This was no longer science. This was something beyond. The man's body was no vessel now. It was a doorway, and something ancient stood on the other side. Outside, the Rhina ships prepared to fire again. But before they could, the codes inside every human body across the galaxy awakened slightly. Billions of people on Earth and on colonies felt a sudden pulse inside their veins. Some collapsed, others screamed, some simply stood frozen as strange visions filled their minds. They saw stars falling, worlds burning, shadows rising from the edge of time. And in every vision, they heard the same words, choose. Back on Earth, leaders panicked as chaos spread through cities. People demanded answers, but there were none. Doctors reported the same codes in every human body glowing brighter, like fire waking from long sleep. Humanity was changing, and no power could stop it. On the station, the young researcher fell to her knees. Please, she begged, tell me what they must choose. The glowing eyes softened for the first time. To remain as they are, the voice said, or to become what we once were. If they remain, the forgotten will fade forever. If they change, the galaxy will bow, or it will burn. The words struck the chamber like thunder. The choice was clear. Humanity was no longer ordinary. They were the center of a storm that could either save or end everything. Outside, the fleets gathered their courage again. More ships prepared to fire. The empires wanted the body, wanted the power, no matter the risk. The young researcher stood between them and the glowing figure, her voice trembling but firm. If you kill him, she shouted into the comms, you will end us all. If you take him, you will wake something you cannot control. Humanity must decide for itself. Her words echoed across the channel, but no one listened. The first fleet fired again, weapons blazing. And this time, the human body raised both hands. The stars themselves seemed to answer. The stars burned with war. Fleets from every corner of the galaxy clashed outside the research station. Beams of plasma cut across the void, missiles tore through the dark, and shattered ships drifted like broken bones. The empires had come for the human body, but now they were fighting each other, blinded by fear and greed. Inside the station, chaos ruled. Walls shook as explosions rocked the outpost. Scientists ran through smoke-filled halls, clutching data crystals and screaming for escape pods. The young researcher moved through the fire, her eyes fixed on the human figure walking calmly down the corridor. He was untouched by flames, untouched by falling steel, as if the world bent around him. The voice from his mouth echoed through every chamber. They fight for nothing. They destroy themselves before the choice is made. The young researcher stumbled beside him, choking on smoke. Then stop them. You have the power. You froze fire. You silenced ships. Why don't you end this? The glowing eyes turned toward her, cold and endless. Because it is not my war. It is theirs. Humanity must rise or fall by their own hand. We only gave them the seed. The words filled her with dread. Billions of humans across the galaxy were already feeling the code awaken inside them. Some collapsed in fear, others cried out as visions struck them. On Earth, entire cities fell silent as people stared at the sky, whispering the same word in unison, choose. The Galactic Council fleet pushed forward, desperate to seize the station before the others could claim it. Boarding parties launched, armored soldiers storming through the airlocks. The corridors filled with battle cries, the clash of blades, the roar of weapons. Yet when they reached the chamber where the human body stood, their courage broke. The man's eyes burned brighter than suns, and every soldier froze. Their weapons grew heavy, their hands shook, their armor felt like stone crushing their bodies. They could not move, could not breathe, as if the very air turned against them. The voice thundered. You are too late. The choice is not yours. One soldier, trembling, shouted through his helmet, then whose is it? Who decides? The answer was a whisper that echoed across every mind. Humanity decides. At that moment, across Earth, the visions grew stronger. Millions of humans saw themselves standing at a crossroads. On one path, they lived as they always had, fragile, flawed, yet free. On the other path, they burned with the power of the forgotten ones, rising as gods among stars, able to shape reality itself. But in that vision of power, they also saw destruction, the fall of worlds, the silence of galaxies consumed in fire. People screamed. Some begged to stay human. Others shouted for power, for ascension. The visions tore humanity apart, splitting families, friends, nations. The earth trembled with the weight of choice. Back on the station, the young researcher fell to her knees. She understood now. The human body had never been a weapon. It was a test. The Forgotten Ones had hidden themselves inside humanity, waiting to return. But they could only return if humans accepted them. The choice was freedom or power, mortality or godhood. The glowing figure turned slowly toward her. "You see the truth." Her voice cracked. "Yes. But they are divided. Half want power, half want peace. What happens if they cannot choose?" The light in his eyes flared, and the station's walls shuddered. "Then the galaxy will break. If humanity is divided, the code will split, and war will follow that will burn until nothing remains." Outside, fleets kept firing. Hundreds of ships fell in flame. The galaxy was already breaking, not tomorrow, not years from now, now. The young researcher stood, her body trembling but her voice strong. "Then help them. Guide them. If they are your vessels, if you need them, then give them hope. Don't let them tear themselves apart." For the first time, the voice inside the human's mouth grew softer. Hope was never ours to give. Hope belongs to them. The lights flickered. The body raised its hands, and beams of energy shot from the chamber, streaking into the void, passing across stars, reaching every human in existence. Each person felt the same pulse inside their chest. The visions grew sharper, the voices clearer. It was not just a choice anymore. It was a question asked to every soul. Who are you? On Earth, a child whispered, "I am human." On Mars, a soldier shouted, "I will be more." On distant colonies, voices rose in millions, some for freedom, some for power. The code split, glowing in two directions. The young researcher watched in horror as the man's body shook violently, torn between paths. His glowing eyes dimmed and flared again, caught in the war of choices. If humanity did not unite, the code itself would break apart and release something even worse. The voice roared, shaking the station. "Decide, or all will be undone." And across the galaxy, every human screamed their answer. The galaxy held its breath. Every human across Earth, Mars, and the colonies felt the question burning inside their blood. The code demanded a choice. To remain as they were, fragile but free, or to awaken the forgotten power that would make them gods. The research station shook with the force of their voices. Across the stars, some humans cried for peace, others screamed for strength. The code tore itself in two, splitting into light and shadow, each pulling against the other. The human body at the center of it all convulsed, glowing veins tearing like cracks in stone. The young researcher stood helpless, fear rising in her chest. If humanity did not choose as one, the voice had warned, the galaxy would break. Already, fleets outside the station were collapsing. Ships fell from the sky as the waves of human energy ripped through them. Entire armies, made of alien empires, screamed as their systems died. The galaxy itself was shaking under the weight of a decision. The glowing man's eyes blazed like dying stars. His voice thundered across every ship, every planet, every heart. "Choose, or all will be undone." On Earth, silence fell. 1 billion humans froze, staring at the sky. The visions tore at them, freedom or power, mortality or divinity. And then, slowly, voices began to join together. At first it was whispers, then shouts, then a roar that shook the heavens. "We are human." The words rose from cities, from fields, from the depths of oceans. From colonies on red Mars, from miners on distant moons, from soldiers holding their rifles in fear. They spoke not as gods, not as vessels, but as themselves. "We are human." The choice spread like fire. The visions of power faded. The burning codes inside their blood dimmed, and the light that pulled them toward godhood shattered. Humanity had chosen not to be carriers, not to awaken the forgotten ones, but to remain what they were. Fragile. Imperfect. Free. On the station, the glowing figure let out a cry that shook the walls. His body burned like a star, light tearing from his skin. The forgotten ones inside him screamed in rage as their prison closed. They had waited for eons, hidden in human flesh, and now they were denied. The human choice sealed them away. The young researcher shielded her eyes as the chamber filled with fire. When the light finally died, the man's body lay still once more. His eyes were closed, his chest unmoving. This time, there was no glow, no code, no power. Only a body. Only a man. The silence after was deeper than any sound. The fleets outside hung broken, their weapons useless, their ships powerless. Across the galaxy, alien empires felt the same truth. Humanity had rejected the Forgotten Ones. The power they had hoped to steal, to control, was gone. The young researcher fell to her knees beside the body. Tears filled her eyes. "You chose well," she whispered. "You chose to be yourselves." A faint smile touched the man's lips, though his body was lifeless. And then even that faded, leaving only stillness. The empires withdrew in silence. No one fired another shot. No one dared. They had seen the storm, and they had seen how close the galaxy had come to ending. Humanity had stood at the center, and by their choice, they had saved not only themselves but everyone. On Earth, people wept and laughed. They held each other, knowing they had faced a temptation older than stars and had chosen the harder path. Not to rule, not to destroy, but to remain what they were. The Galactic Council could not ignore them any longer. The species once dismissed as weak had just held the fate of the galaxy in their hands. Every empire now looked at humanity with new eyes, with awe, with fear, and with respect. The young researcher stood at the window of the station, watching the shattered fleets drift away. Her voice was quiet, but strong. "The galaxy was shocked by what they found on the human body," she said. "But the greater shock is what they found in the human spirit." And far below, on the blue world called Earth, humanity breathed together as one. They had been tested by the Forgotten Ones. They had seen the chance to rise as gods. But they had chosen to remain human. Fragile. Imperfect. Unbreakable.